This is section 6.4. We're going to be talking about ratio, proportion, and variation. So a ratio compares quantities by division. So an example, a group contains 60 women and 30 men. So if we take the ratio of women to men, the first number goes on top, 60 to men, which is 30. You would reduce that fraction, but you would still write it as a fraction. A ratio has to have two numbers, a top number and a bottom number. I realize if you actually take 2 divided by 1, you get 2, but you're not going to write 2. With a ratio, again, you do need a top number and a bottom number. When you have a proportion, that's when you have one fraction equal to another fraction. With proportions, the way you solve them is what we say cross multiplication. So we multiply these two together and we multiply these two together and set them equal to each other. So in this case, we take and multiply the 63 times the 5, 63 times the 5, and we multiply the 7 times the x. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually set those equal to each other. 63 times 5, and then you would solve that equation. And offhand, I do not know what 63 times 5 is, but let's check. 63 times 5 is 315. So you have 7x is equal to 315, and then divide by 7. And you get x equals 45. Applied problems using proportions. First thing you want to do is read the problem. That seems self-evident, but not all my students actually read the problem. Represent the unknown quantity with x. Set up a proportion. You're going to have a number on top, you're going to have a number on the bottom. You're going to have a number on the top, and you're going to have a number on the bottom, and one of these is going to be x. You don't know, you can put it anywhere you want, but you just have to be careful so that corresponding numbers are in the same position. So I'll talk more about that with a specific example. Cross multiply and solve for x. So you have a property tax on a house. The assessed value is $65,000 and the property tax is $825. So if you're going to put value on the top of this fraction on the left, the fraction on the right also has to have value on the top. You can't put it on the bottom. You got to be careful where these numbers go. So the assessed value, if it's on the top on the left, has to be on the top on the right. The property tax, if you're going to put that in the bottom, then you have to put the property tax on the bottom. We don't know what the tax rate is for the $180,000 house. So once you have it set up, then you just cross multiply and solve. So you're going to multiply x times 65,000 is equal to 180,000 times 825. You would actually go ahead and multiply that, but just to show you the next step, you would divide by 65,000. And here's a hint if you didn't know this already. If this number has 3 zeros and this number has at least 3 zeros, I can cross out the 3 zeros, cross out the 3 zeros, and just work with 180 times 825 is divided by 65. Kind of wrote too big there, but let me erase this. 180 didn't give myself enough room here. So you'd end up with 180 times 825 divided by 65. That makes the numbers just a little bit easier to work with. They're not quite as big. So you end up with, let's see if we can get an x value here. As I multiply 180, oops, clear, 180 times, oh, my calculator isn't working for me here. 180 times 825 divided by 65 gives us $22,084. Let's see how many cents. 62 cents. I rounded to the nearest cent. All right, so here's would be our tax for a $180,000 home. Now see, in this example, when the author actually created these slides, they put the tax on the top and the assessed value on the bottom. Tax on top assessed, you still get the same answer. It doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. So as long as this is tax and this is tax, you're good to go. Direct variation. There's different ways of solving direct variation, but this author has you set it up as a proportion. So an alligator's tail length varies directly as its body length. Okay. An alligator with a body length of 4 feet has a tail length of 3.6 feet. What is the tail length of an alligator whose body length is 6 feet? All right, so body is to tail. Body is to tail. All right, so what do we have for body length? We've got a body length of 4, a tail length of 3.6, body length of 6, and we don't know the tail length. So here is our proportion that we're going to solve. Cross multiply 4 times x is equal to 6 times 3.6, and I'll just put it in the calculator all at once. So I'm going to divide here. So 6 times 3.6 divided by 4 gives me a tail length of 5.4 feet. Be careful with inverse variation. Make sure you read the problem. Inverse variation, you set it up as a proportion, then you take the two bottom numbers and switch them. You set it up as a proportion, you take the two bottom numbers and you flip-flop them. Be careful with inverse variation. Students get this wrong all the time. It's because they don't read the fact that it says inverse variation and they always set it up as direct variation and then leave it and solve it as direct variation, which it is not. It is inverse variation. Be very careful here. A bicyclist tips the cycle when making a turn. The angle B formed by the vertical direction and the bank is called the banking angle. So banking angle right there. Banking angle. The banking angle varies inversely as the cycle's turning radius. So as the angle increases, the radius gets smaller. As the angle decreases, the radius gets bigger. When the turning radius is 4 feet, the banking angle is 28 degrees. 4 feet to 28 degrees. What is the banking angle when the turning radius is 3.5 feet? feet. Now, this would be if it was direct variation, but it's not direct variation. It is inverse variation. Take the bottom two numbers and switch them. You must switch the bottom two numbers or you'll get the answer wrong every time. 3.5 over 28. This is the problem that you're going to solve, not this one. Okay? So x times 3.5 is equal to 4 times 28. See if I can get that in. Well, it's hard to see, but you divide by 3.5. Okay, so 4 times 28 divided by 3.5 gives us 32 degrees. And your homework.